Hi guys, so today I'm going to show you how to make probably the easiest loaf of bread you've ever made in your entire life. You start off with 500 milliliters of water. Into this goes 6 to 8 grams of fresh yeast. Just give this a mix to make sure that everything is well incorporated. Now we're going to let this sit for 10 minutes just to give the yeast a head start before we put in the remaining ingredients. After it's been sitting for 10 minutes, I'm going to put in 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of sugar. Just going to mix this together as well. Now next up is the flour. We're going to need 600 grams of flour. I'm using 400 grams of all-purpose flour and 200 grams of whole wheat flour. You can use 600 grams of white flour if you want to, or 600 grams of whole wheat flour if you are that type of person. For me, just mixing in a little bit of whole wheat flour gives this a really nice taste, in my opinion. Just gonna ditch the weight here. Gonna mix it together. This is a no-knead bread, which means that you don't need to knead it. Basically, just combine it until there's no larger lumps present. When we've done this and gotten to consistency that is, lump-free, we're gonna cover this with a cloth and let it cold ferment in the fridge overnight. I'm gonna check back on this tomorrow morning. Okay, so now it's the morning after, and as you can see, our dough has risen quite a bit. Next up, we're gonna fold in the sides. We do this to provoke a bit of structure in the bread. Just turn it 90 degrees and fold in the sides. Just like that. Now we'll cover it up and leave it out at room temperature to proof a bit more. Next up, we'll grease a pan. Next up, I'll use some olive oil to grease up an oven-proof pot. You need to make sure that your pot can handle the oven. I don't really know how to check that. I kind of YOLO'd this one and it hasn't broken yet. I don't know what the correct procedure is. Maybe you do. Then we'll put this into a cold oven and heat the oven up to 250 degrees Celsius. Next up, you can see that our dough has proofed for 3 hours at room temperature and has risen up quite a bit. This coincides with our pot being hot. Next up, we'll scoop the dough into the pot. And the Maillard reaction will happen almost instantaneously. We'll bake the bread with the lid on for the first 35 minutes, and after this, we will take the lid off to make sure that there is a crust development on the top as well. As you can see, it's still quite pale. This is why we take off the lid to ensure the browning. Our bread is now done. It's baked, and I'll just turn it out here. And as you can hear from the sound when I tap it, it's very hollow, which is what you're looking for in a loaf of bread. Just let it cool here on the cooling rack for a couple of minutes before we cut into it. As you can see here, the cold ferment has enabled a lot of the so-called blisters on top here, and it's from the hot pot and the cold ferment, almost caramelized on top. Now we'll just cut into this just to see what it looks like. As you can see, the inside of the bread is quite firm. And this is what you expect from a standard yeast dough. Now the taste of this is fantastic, especially if you consider how little effort was put into this. I strongly suggest you guys to try this out. This is the starter method for a lot of different breads and a lot of experimentation from your side. So especially if you're a new cook or if you are inexperienced, this is a pretty foolproof way to get started.